Good afternoon, everybody, or well, late afternoon now, almost evening, and welcome along to the event tonight, Who Decides the Value of Contemporary Art. This is the first event, actually, of the Inside Out Festival. I think some of you might have already picked up some brochures. They're just over there, sort of on the registration desk. There are details as well, I think, of a few other events that we thought perhaps people here might be interested in, are just sort of taking place throughout the course of the next week or so. Again, you know, this information, do pick it up. But without further ado, we're going to sort of go on. Oh, in fact, we're not actually, because I've just remembered I've got to read out some fire alert procedures from Chelsea, so do listen carefully. If the alarm does sound, we all have to leave the building immediately. And we have to wait in the Chelsea Parade Ground, which is just up here, and is that sort of big quadrangular space for people that don't know Chelsea. You have to basically follow all instructions given by fire wardens, and they will apparently be wearing sort of high-vis orange or yellow jackets with fire warden written across front. If the fire alarm does go, you can't come back in, so basically you just have to evacuate. Also, if people do need to go to the loo, you have to go again through past the student bar area and just follow the signs. So that's the logistics out of the way, and I'll hand over to Julian Stalabras, who is chair this evening. Julian, thank you.
Thanks very much, Ellen. Okay, so we're going to talk a while about who decides value in contemporary art. And I'll start off by introducing our panellists. And there are quite a few, and there are a diverse bunch, so I'm going to approach this subject from different directions. At the far left-hand side of the table is Sophie Hope, who's an artist and independent curator. She was involved in an event recently at the Austrian Cultural Forum called Making a Living, about artists' livings. And I think rather fascinatingly, she's also working on a PhD on the economy of socially engaged art. And generally in her projects, she has an interest in rethinking the role of politics in art, in the roles of art workers, and in challenging authorship, which I think is also a very relevant thing to think about when we sort of think about artistic value and how it's often attached to singular authors. Then to her right is Anne-Sophie Dinant, who's a curator at the South London Gallery. She works with emerging artists there. She's curated many new commissions, and she also works on a film programme there. She writes too, and has also done independent curatorial projects. She is able to speak from at least two perspectives, in part of all of that, working in the kind of public sector and working with artists who have perhaps had limited commercial recognition. But she's also worked for a commercial gallery in Paris, so she can tell us about the business side too. Jane Lee, to her right, is the head of fine arts at Central St Martin's. She directs the BA programme there, and she's involved at the moment in rewriting the BA course, and indeed engaging in a great deal of thinking about pedagogy. Plainly, the whole model of the art school, of how it is that we make artists, more or less professionally, is highly relevant to who we think artists are and how we impute, again, value to their work. She's also been involved in, she does a great deal of translation and thinking about poetry and visual arts too, so it may be that some of her answers come from that perspective as well. Then to her right is Sarah Rolls. She's doing a fine art degree at the moment. She's in her third year at Goldsmiths. She's well known for setting up a body called Q-Art, which I guess that some of you here will be aware of, which is a way of bringing artists together from various different colleges, especially around London, for discussions, criticisms of each other's work, and gallery visits and so forth. She's also published a book recently of interviews called 12 Gallerists, 20 Questions, in which, well, she set out to interview gallerists and ask them questions about all sorts of things, but particularly about value. So we'll ask her about that shortly. Then we have to my left Wolfgang von Linkewitz, who's an artist, founder of T1+2, which was an independent, gallery space. One of the first things it showed was an extraordinary installation by veteran destroyer of value, I guess, Gustav Metzger, an amazing newspaper piece, absolutely temporary and disposable work, I guess you could say. And in his own work, Wolf has been interested in kind of surreal would be a lazy way, but perhaps a shorthand way to put it, but a sort of splicing of various pop culture and high art references. But both with his work with Metzger and with other veterans of conceptual art and the action scene, indeed, Dr. Moore, he's had much cause to think about the question of value. And recently arrived, Lisa K. Samoto, who was also involved with T1+2, is now the director of the Hive Gallery projects. She too is an artist, but Hive Gallery is a sort of activist collective involving guerrilla events, and has recently had a show on luxury and excess called Babette. So again, somebody's had cause to think about value and perhaps also conspicuous consumption. Now, so those are the panelists. I will give a very brief introduction to this subject, and then we'll go straight into conversation. I guess, and we'll see how it goes, but I guess for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open it to the floor for a similar sort of period of time. So you'll have plenty of time for questions and comments and probably violent disagreements, I would think, on the topic. So, I mean, if one thinks about the question of value in the economy as a whole, it's undoubtedly complex and sticky, but it seems particularly so when we deal with the arts. It doesn't seem to be simply a question of supply or demand or of various forces, within the economy trying to wrest monopolies out of the free market by various kinds of institutional means or means of price fixing and the kind of usual tactics. I mean, there's a very odd character of the art market itself. That's one thing, in which so much is controlled and so much is secret. The production and consumption are to a large degree controlled, and that so much is sealed off in private agreements that we know nothing about. And then, I suppose there's a question of what the use value, for instance, of contemporary art means in the first place. I mean, if we use that old Marxian distinction between use value and exchange value, use value being what you use a commodity for, this commodity being relatively cheap, but if you lack it, you're going to die. So it has huge use value, even if its exchange value is currently very low. And what is the use value of art? Is it even scandalous to impute a use value to art? Is the use value of art about showing off, about social cohesion? Does it have a use in that way? Is it some kind of adjunct and research arm for business creativity, we're continually told? And then there's the issue of its exchange value, which for many people seems, well, equally scandalous in many ways. This is a title of a Robert Thompson book, recent Robert Thompson book, $12 million Stuffed Shark, kind of puts a finger on that.